everybody. Welcome to a big video all about how to be TTRPG's most valuable player. I've already done a series of shorts on this, but I'm grabbing them and I'm putting them all together in one space for you. And what do I mean by TTRPG's most valuable player? When I turn up to a gaming table and I sit down, I want everybody there, me, the GM, the other players, to have a lot of fun, but I want to be invited back. And when you sit down at your gaming tables, I want you to be invited back. So this is my series of tips on how to do that. And I'm starting with number 1, play to lift up. You might also hear this being called being a fan of the players. But what it really means is that when somebody tells you about their character, when they introduce their character in the beginning of the game, they're giving you a wish list about how your character can respond to their character. And sure, you've got free will, you don't have to do it, but if you do it, you will make that person so happy. If you respond to the bard, who is really charismatic and really attractive and really persuasive, by agreeing with them on something that you didn't really agree with, if the clever party wizard comes up with a brilliant plan and you support it, you back it to the hilt 100% because they're smart and they know best. If you have a dark, scary, secretive character, maybe react to them like you're a little bit afraid of them. But basically, when people tell you about their character, they're giving you a wish list. And when you have the ability to make that wish come true, you will make people feel fantastic. And that is what they will remember. Number 2. If you think something is cool, if you enjoyed something, genuinely enjoyed it at the gaming table, then tell people. Tell the GM, tell the other players that a detail they invented was really brilliant, and they will remember that you made them feel good. And when you make people feel good at the gaming table, you 100% will get the best out of them, the best experience. But, and this is the really secret bit, the secret sauce, when you tell people what it is you like, you will probably get more of it. So tell people what you like, make them feel brilliant so that they will perform even better and you will get more of the stuff you're enjoying anyway. Number 3, involve other people in your personal plot. So say you've got an evil twin sister in the next village over that is trying to raise an army of zombies. Or maybe you are the main antagonist, the gangland's boss's kid. Or you've got some other really, really dark and terrible secret. Confide it in the other players. People love being asked for help with your personal problems. And it does a couple of things which I think are really cool. Firstly, it gives your personal plot a little bit of space to breathe, which is nice. I think sometimes we can feel inhibited, like my personal plot is taking over the table and other people don't like that. But also, it means that other people will get to enjoy your personal plot as much as you're enjoying it. So it will become more entertaining for everybody. Number 4 is reincorporation and callbacks. When I have, as a player, created a detail in a game, maybe a bit of culture, some world building, and the GM or another player later on brings that detail up, it really feels pretty cool. It feels like that person, they listened to what I said and they thought that it was worthwhile referencing again, that it was good enough, that it was interesting enough that they should bring it up again. So when you take the material that other people have created, refer to it again, bring it up again, it will make people feel fantastic. And that's going to be something I keep coming back to. A lot of my advice is how to do things that will make the other players feel good, because if they feel good, you will get the best out of them and they will like having you around and you will like having them around. Number 5 is about buy-in. So in all games, whether there is a GM, whether there is a dungeon master, whether it's a weird, funky little indie game, there is going to be something that requires buy-in. Maybe it's the scenario, maybe it's the setting, maybe it's the starting situation. You've got to go into a mine, so you go into the mine, right? You do that, right? You don't sit there and argue about how it would be much more fun to go to the next village over, which you know that the GM hasn't prepped, hasn't got any idea, and just starts making stuff up off the fly. So one of the things I always say to people is buy-in. I am here for the game that you are running. And if you are a player who turns up 100% bought into the game that is being run at the table, instead of sitting there being a cool rebel, honestly, everyone is going to have a better time, probably including you. The next one is sort of an improv tip, and it's go with your gut. If you read books about improv, or if you've come up through a theatre tradition, then this isn't going to be particularly new or exciting, but I think as sometimes role players, we forget this advice, go with your gut. And what that means is, if you are being invited to improvise a detail at the table, come up with a plan, come up with something quickly off the top of your head. Go with your first thought, go with your gut. Don't sit there for ages thinking, no, that's not good enough. I've got to sit here and come up with something more clever, more unusual, more unique, just better. Go with your first thought. This will preserve the flow of the game, the momentum, the energy, and that is actually a really important thing to continue to preserve. You know, part of the reason that games work in the way that they work is because they feel pacey, they feel good. Part of the reason APs are so popular is because they have been edited to make them really pacey, and that means something. So number one, if you can preserve the flow of the energy and you've still got a good enough idea, then go for it. I think the other thing is, though, that once you get used to improvising, once you do more of it and you become more and more confident, you are going to find that your first thought is the most exciting thing. It is the cool idea. And honestly, I think we get too hung up on, is this idea good enough? Is this idea cool enough? Good enough is great, but you don't have to go further than that in order for the game to be brilliant and fun and enjoyable. I think number 7 might be my favourite, which is what I call collaborate in your own backstabbing. So back in the day, all the shady characters would be passing secret notes to the GM, working out how they were going to steal the treasure behind people's backs. And I say forget that. Forget worrying about that. Don't do it in secret. Play with an open hand. Because if I think your shady thief character is about to steal the party treasure, I am going to hand it to you. I'm going to tell you that you are the only person I trust. I'm going to say, keep this safe. It's really important. We are depending on you. I'm going to make that betrayal more juicy, more exciting, more dramatic. I'm going to collude with you in making the stakes of that piece of story much higher, much, much cooler. So if you're doing it because you think it makes good story, play with an open hand. If you're doing it because you want to get one over on the players, not the characters, the players around the table, then maybe stop and have a think about that. That will not make you popular. It probably won't make people want to invite you back, because whilst it is exciting and it's cool for you to backstab everybody, you've just made everybody else's story less fun. You have made their stories expendable and less fun, sacrificed them for your own. And that is not going to make you the most valuable player at the table. Next is about respecting other people's choices, understanding their needs, and giving them what they need. We've heard a lot in the community about safety tools. There's a huge variety out there, and I think that this is part of being the most valuable player at the table. If you are somebody who respects other people's choices, you are going to be invited back. If somebody says that they just can't deal with torture in a game right now, then leave it out. A game is rarely so narrow that you absolutely have to include the one thing this person says they can't deal with right now. Part of being the most valuable player is standing up for them in that moment and that need. And if the game is that tightly written that you cannot do it without the one thing, without the torture or whatever that somebody said they really can't do, then the GM will have known that from the start, and it is on the GM to explain that right up front so there are no surprises and that player has the opportunity to opt out. That for me is part of GM prep, is knowing that sort of thing in advance and making it really clear to people. So part of being the most valuable player is making sure that you've got other people's back, because if we're here to have fun, we're here to entertain each other, we're not here to kind of pull surprise nasty stuff that people genuinely don't want. Number 7, make mistakes, make bad decisions. Why am I saying this? Avery Alder, who wrote the amazing game Monster Hearts, gives us some really, really interesting advice in that game to drive NPCs like they are stolen cars. And I would like people to give that gift to their characters, to drive your characters like they're stolen cars, like they're things that you have borrowed for a while. Your character doesn't need you to be their helicopter parent, and doing so will often drive players into what is called analysis paralysis. I can't make a decision because what if it's not the perfect decision? What if the GM punishes me? What if I get it wrong? And that can lead to sessions which are nothing but dithering about the course of action that you want to take instead of getting on with the story. And I genuinely don't find that a lot of fun in a game. And if you do, well, power to you, but I probably won't be playing in your table anytime soon. Don't be hesitant. Don't be overprotective. Make bad decisions. Make dodgy business deals. Lead with your heart, not your head. Run into battle, because that is going to lead to story. And if it is a massive screw up and a massive mistake, that's just more story. That's just more interesting events to happen. I think of all my advice, though, this is probably the one I would say, don't do this for the OSR. I think that's a very particular design and play culture, which this probably isn't going to work in. But for other things, just go for it. And if you make a mistake or you mess something up, then the game and the system should be big enough to cope with that. And the GM certainly should be. And I'm sure that they are. 10, I want you to quit. If you are not enjoying a game, you can leave. One of the things that I think is very strange about this hobby is that sometimes we are really not enjoying games, and yet we continue to turn up and sit at a table for 2 to 4 hours, sometimes weekly, sometimes for months, doing something we don't enjoy. And when that happens, I think that even if you don't realise it, other people can probably tell. You'll be bringing the energy down because you're not going to be feeling it and you're not going to be happy. So if we're all here to have fun, the thing that I want you to do to make sure you're having fun is know what you like, recognise when it's time to quit, and graciously exit a game. Because although you might feel like somehow you've got to soldier on and that you're the bad guy if you don't, I honestly think that people will respect it and people will go and find fun things to do, which everybody enjoys more than sitting there trying to make it work when it's not working. It's like a relationship that has really fizzled out and you need to end it and move on, and it's exactly the same here. Number 11, and I have touched on this already before, but tell me what you want. Like, really tell me. Understand what it is that you like about a game or about a setting, and tell me, and tell the other players, and tell the GM. In fact, there's no good telling me if I'm not in your game because I can't do anything about it. And what do I mean by that? I'm saying, do you like really crunchy systems, or do you like systems that are very light touch but have got a lot of story building or relationship building in them? This isn't a one is better than the other. This is a what do you like? Go out and get more of it. Do you like fantasy? Do you like spaceship battles? And be really clear and honest. And it might be that the GM says, this is a medieval fantasy game. Space hasn't been invented yet. There will be no spaceship battles for you. But it might be that another person at the table says, actually, I've got a one-shot of a spaceship game that I really wanted to get to the table, and I didn't think anybody here would be interested. Does anybody mind if I take the next slot and I run my space game? And then you're going to get something, and they're going to get something, and it's all win-win. Are you reading the room? Sometimes it is so brilliant to have a laugh and a joke in our games. This is a really social hobby, and I love that just as much as anybody else does. And sometimes the laugh and the joke and the chat around the table has just taken all of the emotion and the heat out of a really, really powerful dramatic scene. So I would like people to get really, really good at reading the room. When is it appropriate to interrupt? When is it not appropriate to interrupt? And I get that this can be hard for some people. And in that case, I'd say, do you have a buddy who is really good at this that you can kind of check in with sometimes to say, are we in a tense space right now? Should I be pulling back, or am I good to go? I think the other thing that is really helpful for people who do a lot of playing online, like I do, because my friends don't live where I live, sad times, we often use the chat function in whether you're using Discord or Google Meet or some sort of Microsoft WebEx or whatever. There's usually a chat function, and what we do quite a lot of is we'll put our jokes in the chat function so that the people who are concentrating on the super intense scene can stay concentrating on the super intense scene, and then later on they can see the funny thing you said afterwards. And I feel that way that you kind of get the best of both worlds. So I said at the start of this video that I would be doing 11 tips, and that was number 12, and I've just checked my list and I actually had 14, so sorry about that. Number 13 though is helping other players with their personal plot. So we said much earlier on that inviting other players into your personal plot was a good thing, or you can get involved with other people's personal plot. Sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, people feel inhibited from pursuing a personal plot line because they think they're taking attention away from everybody else. It's not fair, people aren't going to like it, they're distracting from the main plot. Well, you can help out by saying, no, this personal plot you've got, this is important. This is something I am interested in. Can I help you with it? And you can make that offer in character, you can make that offer out of character, but give them and their personal plot as much room to breathe. Find something in their plot to really enjoy and get invested in, because I think ultimately most of us are here because we're interested in a good story. And lastly, 14, this is something that will make you the most valuable player at the table, not for the other players, but for the GM or the DM or the facilitator of the game. And that is, if you can't make a session, and it happens, things come up, tell people early and offer a set of dates for when you're next available. God, Becky, this is so boring. This is just admin, and yeah, it is. But one of the things I think a lot of people who don't GM don't realise is how much work the GM does on the admin side of the game, making sure that a date has been arranged. And there's a known joke that actually it's quite hard to arrange a date for a session. So if you spend ages trying to get a date and you suddenly can't make that date, that happens, that's absolutely fine, but you're going to take so much stress and pressure off the GM's shoulders if you either give alternate dates that you can next do, or even better, take on responsibility for arranging the next session. Thank you so much for listening. I've been Becky Annison. I've been telling you all about the top tips I have for being the most valuable player at the table, but I am sure I have missed things. And if I have, I want you to tell me in the comments. Or if you've never heard of some of these and you try them out in your next game, tell me how it went. I would absolutely love to hear about it. Could you please give me a like or a subscribe as well, because all of that helps little tiny creators like me and Black Armada Games. And watch out for our next video. Goodbye.